Well, it's been a great day, and who better to wrap it up with not only two great thinkers on this issue of climate, but two really passionate thinkers. And Paul, I want to start with you. You have a new book out. And one of the things I really appreciate about Drawdown is I'm a big believer in the dictum, to name something is to own it. Yeah. Where I so resonate with what the thesis you put out is that one of the failings of the green movement is that the language got away from us. Start there. Talk about it. Share with us the thesis.
Chinese say that naming is the beginning of wisdom, too. So,
interesting.
Yeah, if you don't name it, then how do you understand it? How do you do it? We named the goal, which is Drawdown, which is to reverse global warming. We thought that was really important because, you see up here 2C, but what does that mean to you, really? And what does it mean to anybody? What does it mean to, a woman in Belgium who wakes up in the morning and you say 2C, and she's going, what the, I mean, it doesn't mean anything to 99.99% of the people in the world because they don't even understand this, what it means in Fahrenheit in this country. And so it's an abstraction. And so we wanted to actually name the goal and then map, measure, and model the solutions we have at hand. That is, we know how to do them. They're all scaling. I say sort of W.W. Granger stuff. In other words, it's not like if only we could and they did that, this could happen. No, it's like we're doing it, it's scaling. And then to project it out in a rigorous but reasonable way and see if we could, in fact, reverse global warming. And part of that process is to really change the language, how we're talking about it. Because what we tend to do is keep piling on what the problems are. In other words, the probability of what's going to go wrong. And imagine you're a basketball team, you're the coach, and you go out to your team, and the first thing you say is, most likely we're going to lose, and actually we're getting worse. And so if we're going to lose today, let's not lose so fast as we did last game, Yeah,
there is a lot of you're basically dead, but we'll talk about it, but we're basically dead.
Yeah, and so the probability is based on extraordinary science. So it's not the science we're talking about how to communicate.
Right.
And what we're saying is the science is impeccable. We have a great problem statement. Let's focus on a solution.
So I want to just take the top of that and before we go to Tom, which is, what is the right language that we could introduce to generate the political will that we need to get to those solutions? Then we'll talk about the solutions. How should we recast the issue?
Right now, the way we cast it is we have a super wicked problem. And for most people, they do not see possibility, opportunity, or engagement or involvement in how it is defined and put forth in the world. I
like those words. Repeat those. Opportunity.
I forgot what I said. This came streaming out, streaming live. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so what we have to do, I think, and what we wanted to do with Drawdown is show that, in fact, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. In other words, climate change is a feedback from a system.
Right.
So it is actually a blessing. It is not a curse.
What do you mean by that?
Because any system that ignores its feedback from itself perishes, whether it's a company or your body.
Right.
So this is the system. It's called the Earth, and we have this extraordinary thing called the atmosphere, and it's giving feedback. And so the feedback is the opening to opportunity, to possibility. And the most important thing that I think it opens up is employment, because we're the only species on Earth without full employment. Think of that. There's 10 million other species. We figured out how to marginalize human beings and make them feel they have no value whatsoever. And never has there been so much good work that needs to be done that's really about regeneration, restoration, about actually bringing dignity, purpose, and a sense of self-worth to people all around the world. And that is what climate change
Let me go back to that in a second. It's fascinating. Tom, as I've watched what you've been doing on this, on the climate front now for so many years, and I think of the division of labor here, what I felt is that Tom Steyer's mission has been to help states, communities, and the country generate the political will to take on this huge climate challenge. A, am I right about that? And B, how are we doing?
Well, it is true that what we've been trying to do is to make it possible for other people to make the argument and for us to make the argument that, as Paul said, we have the capability of having a better world. It's not going to be something that's going to cost us something, but we're going to be healthier, richer, more prosperous, the kinds of things that Americans have traditionally tried to accomplish as a generation. And from my standpoint, looking at the natural world and looking at where the technology is and knowing what kind of costs we're looking at in terms of energy generation, what kinds of opportunities we have, we strongly believe we can do this. And the question is, how can we communicate that to people so that they feel as if we can? This is the classic American reaction, which is there's something going on that could be a big problem, and we can solve that problem and at the same time make ourselves better off in many ways and take a leadership role. And so that's what we see this as predominantly a question of politics, that there are people for whom following that apparently logical, economically sensible, health-creating strategy is bad for them. And so they don't want it. And so all we really need to do is, in our opinion, get enough people with the information so they can act on their own behalf in a democracy.
Do you feel you've been making headway?
Well, I think that, I will say this. Our organization is basically a grassroots organization. And so we spend our time going door to door. We're on 370 college campuses. We registered over 1 million people last year. We knocked on 12.5 million doors with our partners. We know that the American people, regardless of geography and partisanship and every other way of cutting up the American people, are on our side. But what's going on politically is something very different. And we can see, to me, the parallel between the issue about energy and today's tax bill, the parallels are extreme in the sense that they're a group of very rich, well-positioned political donors whose interest is diametrically opposed from the interest of the vast number of the American people, and they want their way. And so we are trying as hard as possible to enable the traditional one human being, one vote, everybody's as valuable as everybody else, a democracy of human beings, not of dollars. I keep saying they want a democracy of dollars. Every dollar is as valuable as every other dollar. Yeah. We want a democracy of human beings. And so we're going to find out whether this is about human beings or this is about dollars. And the dollars have been doing very, very well.
Yeah. Tom, and I'm going to ask you this as well, Paul. When you find yourself and your team up against not the professional climate deniers and doubt salespeople, but just average folks who just say, I don't really buy this. And I've always felt it's hard to talk someone out of something they haven't really been talked into. So it's more their attitude toward climate tends to be a kind of a cultural reaction for whatever reason. What is your approach, Paul? What is your approach? How do you break through to those people? How do you, at the one hand, show them respect as individuals, but also, can you move them, or is that just a waste of time?
Well, the two things that we have felt resonate with Americans, regardless of geography and partisanship, are health. This is all tied up with pollution of water and air and people being sick and kids having asthma, and jobs, as Paul said. That we have a gigantic task ahead of us, which will be also a fantastic opportunity together. I started in this 10 years ago, and I thought this would be World War II. That we would decide as a society that we have a problem, and that in solving that problem, we would be closer together, proud of ourselves, better off, really use it to create all kinds of knowledge and shared experience and a better, more just society. And it's gotten very, very tied up in partisanship. But what we see, I'll
Thought it was going to be World War II and it turned out to be the Civil War.
It did. And I'll tell you one last story. So my old roommate is a retired Army officer, career Army officer, who lives in the poorest county in West Virginia, which is a poor place. And I went down to see him because he's been sick. And his wife is 42 years old. She grew up in a rural part where there was a coal plant here and a coal plant here, and she got lung cancer at 22 as a non-smoker.
Wow.
That's health.
Yeah.
You know, it's impossible for the people in that community not to recognize the health costs. But it's also true, as he reminded me, his cousin and his brother-in-law are both unemployed coal workers. They got $82 an hour. If you've been to the poorest county in West Virginia, I'm telling you, that is a fortune.
Yeah.
So when you think about the opportunities, it's really important to know that just because we create 2 million net jobs, that doesn't mean one of them is for his cousin and the other one is for his brother-in-law. It's really important as a society that we be saying, we'll solve it together, but you are part of us. And so we're going to reach out to you knowing that this change is going to hurt you. We see you as part of us, and therefore we're going to reach out and try and bring you along with the part of society that is growing and that is using technology and, you know,
that's great.
Transforming itself so fast.
Dear fellow American, Paul, take up the same question. Tom said I approached them through health and through jobs.
Yeah.
Same thing, different slightly? How do you think about that challenge of?
Well, the data we accumulated for Drawdown was global. So we think globally. Where we're going now is to be able to basically map it and model it over a specific socio-political boundaries. In fact, there's a guy named Michael Vestergaard in Holland now who has got these extraordinary dirigible airships in the upper atmosphere who can now measure exactly the emissions from a farm, a country, a city in real time. So we're going to have real-time data on CO2 and CO2 EQ. And so that's going to be an amazing change in the world because it's going to have real-time information on what's happening. And so much we're going to Bonn and saying, well, our NDC, our nationally determined commitments, we're doing pretty good. No, we'll know exactly who's doing what and where. And so Ed Lee was here, Ron Emanuel, and we'll know what's going on in San Francisco. So it's extraordinary that way. What we do at Drawdown, though, however, is we do not try ever to change anybody's mind because when's the last time you want somebody to change your mind? I mean, we're as humans, we don't like that when somebody thinks that your mind should change. You know? Right. And so what we do is create basically a sense of possibility. And so when you look at the book, I mean, it is visually beautiful, and there's stories, and there's narratives, and there's not fear. There's not doom, there's not threat, there's not this sort of Damoclean sword hanging over you if you don't enact these. It actually says, look at, this is an offer, you know, it's not a mandate, you know, it's not a dictate, it's an offer.
So use that
generosity, yeah. And so what we want to do and what we see happening is that people are self-organizing around the solutions. In other words, they're saying, wow, I had no idea it was so diverse and broad. And this one really lights me up, and like girls' education or this or that, whatever it is, and I want to do something. So now they feel engaged, and they don't feel like somehow it all rests upon them, because we often hear and see, well, what can you do as an individual? You know, this whole thing, you know, what can an individual do? Well, actually, there's not much an individual can do. Right. There's a lot that we can do, and when we link up as individuals, and I think that's what Drawdown seems to draw out.
I also like the point you're both making, which is that, you know, you read a lot of studies these days, you know, from this university or that 47.3% of current jobs will all be gone by 2050.
Yeah, that's.
I love when I read those. You know, not 47.2, not 47.4. But 47.3% of all current jobs. Who the hell knows what jobs will be here? 10 years ago, did anyone know there was a job, a search engine optimizer? Mom, Dad, I want to be a search engine optimizer. You can't be an ophthalmologist. What the hell is a search engine? So who knows what jobs? And it may well be with It was interesting because I just came from Saudi Arabia and India. I mean, two countries that you have masses of low-skilled labor. And with AI and automation, digitization coming out, I mean, these people are really threatened with, because they're trying to get middle skills just when middle skills are being really wiped out by machines. And I think there's a lot of potential in the green industries to employ all these people in new occupations.
Well, I mean, right now, if we really step back and look at our economy and what we're doing, we're stealing the future. And we're selling it the present, and we're congratulating ourselves and calling it GDP. And basically, it's kleptocracy of the natural systems and natural capital. What we're saying is we can just as easily heal the future, restore the future, regenerate the future, sell it in the present. It has value. Companies do that. They know if they don't invest in the future in terms of R&D and new technology, they're dead. So every company knows that on that level. It's just a matter of us knowing that on the earthly level. It's the same principle applies, which is let's invest in the future. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean stopping or slowing down. Or let's, we're going over a cliff, so let's slow down. I mean, if you're going down the wrong road, you still are when you go slower. And so what we're saying is stop, go back the other way. And on an economic level, both for jobs and for sort of making people feel they're valuable, that they're doing something purposeful. I don't know of a mother or father or a community that doesn't really want to carry a sense that they have purpose and meaning for the next generation, really. I mean, this is what it means to be a human being, and that's lost when we drown ourselves in what's going wrong and how fast it's going worse.
I've often thought, before I retire, I'm going to change my business card. Right now it says Thomas L. Friedman, New York Times Foreign Affairs columnist, and I want to change it to Thomas L. Friedman, New York Times Humiliation and Dignity Correspondent. Because really I spent most of my career watching people acting out on their humiliation and questing for dignity.
Yes.
Tom, I love the way you approached that, where you said that you really thought this was going to be like World War II. We all come together, we get behind this thing, we spin off new industries or whatever, and it turns out to be the Civil War. But I know that analogy doesn't just come to your head by accident. Your father was the assistant to the chief prosecutor at the Nuremberg trials. How did that affect you and your whole thinking about this climate issue?
So I was telling Tom that I went to Bonn for the most recent climate conference, and then my daughter and my daughter lives in London, went over to visit the court where they tried the Nazi war criminals, but also to visit the stadium where they had the huge rallies, to just get a sense, because my father, I'd never been there before, and I thought it'd be interesting to see. They have a museum there, and they show some of the pictures and also some movies of the trials. And one of the people who was there was asking me, we met somebody who'd studied it, so he had checked to see what my father had done, and she was asking me what was moving about it to me. And of course, the trial went from the end of 45 to the end of 46. And so obviously at that point, my father, who was probably 28 years old, had virtually all of his cohort of friends be in World War II, and therefore also go through some horrifically dangerous things for a lot of his friends. So I think she thought I was going to say he made a big sacrifice and would have felt very proud of himself for doing this job, and I'm sure he felt the exact opposite, which is being a lawyer in a trial. He probably did not think that was the most dangerous duty that an American had done between December 7, 1941 and the end of 1946. And in fact, lots of his friends had done things that were actually very difficult and dangerous. But what was moving to me was the idea that our country had not only gone out of its way to try and do the right thing and to stand up together, in terms of what was right, and make sacrifices to try and make that right, but also at the end of the war, we tried to impose an ethical guideline, a framework for the first time for thinking about how you're supposed to behave on an international stage. And so what I actually was moved by was that idea that we would take that role.
Moral leader.
Yes, which, if you think about the United States, I mean, I know that we started in a very unjust place in so many ways. When you think about the start of this society, it didn't include equality for the vast bulk of the human beings who lived in this country, including all women, people of color. It was really white males who owned property, and I think we're probably Christians. But we've made a lot of progress, and the progress has been about being just, about being more just. And so actually the moving part to me was the idea of kind of doing what Paul's talking about, which is to try and see a better future and then insist on it and try and have that future be one based on a value system around justice and inclusion, which is really what they were talking about in 1946 in the most stark and painful of ways. You know, you're not allowed to go kill people.
That used to be us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul, I want to, before we go to any questions, go to the second part of your book, the 100 different ways we can do this and make money and provide opportunity and inspiration for people. Share some of those.
Well,
share the idea behind them.
The idea behind it is that we didn't know. No one's ever map measured and modeled the 100 top solutions to climate change and reversing global warming. It's never been done. Believe me, top 50, top 75, top 60, top 40, it's never been done. So when we went into it, we knew we couldn't do it by ourselves, that's for sure. We're a little tiny NGO in Sausalito, California. We'd have all the credibility of a lentil, you know, if we said, oh, this is what. So I told Tom backstage, you know, because Tom and Kat were our initial funders, and I said, we're doing really well, we're in our 7th printing. The book sold more this month than it did when it came out in April, and we have no PR, no social media, nothing. And it's just a testament to people really interested in solutions. But I said, I feel like a kid going back to his dad, even though I'm older than him, and saying, oh, I got straight A's, look at, here, you did good, Dad.
Good investment.
But anyway, what happened is we were really surprised, you know, because we did the math, the models where we have 220 people working together to create Drawdown.
Right.
Scientists and botanists and biologists and politicians and NGOs and, you know, engineers, architects, all of them working together, you know, to create this. And half of our research fellows are PhDs, and they were from 22 countries, 6 continents. It's an international effort. It wasn't just here in California. And when the solutions came out, we and Chad, my vice president of research is here, and Catherine, who wrote the book with me, they're both here. And by the way, Dan Lashoff, who is, I call him the chief science officer for NextGen. Dan was amazing for us in terms of being an outside expert scientific reviewer and his staff. But when we pushed the button in February and said, okay, what are the, you know, because the models are interlinked and they're systemic, and you can't do it, you can't analyze it by themselves. We were shocked. We were so surprised. We're going, oh, maybe we made a mistake. And went back and looked at the algorithms and the inputs and so forth, and we didn't. And the number one solution, which was so unsexy, it was so disappointing actually, was refrigerant management. It's like,
You see, what I love about that is that, you know, I've always had a motto about this, which is that if it isn't boring, it isn't green.
yes.
Okay, that is that. The real, you know, I once profiled the guy from NRDC, who actually figured out how to reduce the power consumption of every Coke machine in America. Now, to figure out how to reduce the power consumption of every Coke machine, first you have to understand the mechanics of how a Coke machine works.
Yeah.
Then you have to understand how it interfaces with a utility. There is no more boring institution on God's green earth than a public energy utility.
Yeah.
But it's when you get inside that and you understand those connections, suddenly you have great leverage. And that's really what those solutions.
But what refrigerant management is the HFCs, though.
Yeah.
These are 9,000 times more powerful than CO2. So they're just leaking. They're going right up in the atmosphere. But the second one is onshore wind. The third one.
What was the second one?
Onshore wind.
Onshore wind.
Number 2, which is really, the third one is reduced food waste. Number 4 is plant-rich diet. Number 5 is restoration protection of tropical forests. Number 6 was educating girls. Educating girls.
Why?
Why? Because when a girl is educated, supported to matriculate to what we call high school level, instead of being yanked out of school to either work to get her brother through school or early marriage, this educated girl becomes a woman who plans her family on her terms. She's become a woman more on her terms, if not entirely, as opposed to being imposed upon her by her culture, village, or religion, or the men in the village. And so she has an average of 2 children versus 5+. And so that plus family planning, which is number 7, you combine those together, they would be number 1. If you put onshore, offshore wind together, they would be number 1. So the data are sort of, in a sense, you know, plastic in that sense, you know, but we couldn't really model on and offshore wind because they're very different economic regimes, and we did the economic side, and IEA is here, thank God, and we use only data on the carbon side only from peer-reviewed literature only, and on the economic side only from IEA, World Bank, Bloomberg Energy, from respected international institutions. So what Drawdown is not what we know at Drawdown. It's what we all know. It's what we are doing, and it's data from the best institutions, the best science in the world, reflected back to the world. This is what we know, this is what we're doing, and this is what's possible.
Paul, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
I remember when we first talked about this, and I can't remember how many years ago, the hope was that someday it would be real-time changing as everybody came up with new information to kind of self-edit the whole project.
Yes.
You think that's still a possibility?
Oh yeah, definitely, because we are moving. We have a consortium now of 9 universities who are working together to create it's a living research project.
Right.
Okay, and it will be housed, I think, at one of the big UC universities, but it'll work with Atari in Hyderabad, who know the best sustainable university probably in Asia, but certainly in India, ANU in Canberra, Grantham Institute.
Just such a great idea.
It's
just such a great
ASU,
idea.
Duke, Notre Dame,
Because you know the informational change and get better.
Open sourced, completely transparent.
It's just such a great
postdocs galore.
I'm going to leave now.
No, but I mean, it'll be information. Anybody can get the information anytime, anywhere, and they can take it and they can remodel it.
Yeah, I just love it.
Or they can localize it to San Francisco or to Nebraska and so forth.
So we have a few minutes left, and this is a closing panel, so I just want to make sure that we get a few questions in back there by the mic.
Hi, Adam Stern from Actera, Bay Area Environmental Group. Paul, you've written a great book, Drawdown, that is a roadmap to solutions. Tom, you've engaged a political constituency across the country. What can the two of you do together to draw on the strengths that each of your organizations have created?
We started together.
Sound like you.
I mean, I think Paul actually embodies something really important in this conversation, which is also, I must say, this will sound very provincial, but is typically Californian, which is he's really optimistic, he's positive, he's talking, you know, one of the things he said to me, Adam, which very early on, he said, I don't like when people use sports analogies and war analogies, because as far as I'm concerned, I want to use language that's much more positive and kind of life reinforcing. And so I've really taken a lot of learning, I think, from Paul's attitude, very, very positive attitude and approach of including people, because I think we're in such a conflictual time in our society that when you do this, I do think it kind of takes the temperature down really substantially in the room.
Yeah.
Hold off. I want to make sure we get some more questions. Young lady here.
Hi, my name is Ashley. I was just quickly wondering how you can bring Drawdown to the individual level and actually have people, the different aspects that you mentioned beforehand were stuff that kind of companies or large organizations can do, but how can the individual be able to have their own project Drawdown and inspire people to actually take that initiative?
What a great question. I have no idea, but I do. But I'll tell you what's happening, and I'm going to just be honest, you know, like how would I know that? I don't even know you. I would love to, but I don't know you, so how could I answer that question? What you should do. You're an individual. What is happening, however, is different, which is that individuals are getting together and creating drawdown projects based on the book. We're cooperating, we're helping them, we don't manage. There's like a Drawdown Nova Scotia. Like, we didn't do that. And they're committing to reversing emissions in Nova Scotia by 2025. We didn't do that. They are doing it. So I feel like if you give people the tools and the information, that they will self-organize in a way, and they know what to do. And I think the day is over when somebody should stand up and say, I know what you should do. You know, I have the action plan, you know, call to action. I think that's kind of dead. What we're doing is a call to information and sharing and generosity and connecting. That's what we're trying to do.
You know, I began this morning by saying we're in the middle of 3 different climate changes: a change in the climate of technology, a change in the climate of globalization, and a change in the climate of the climate. The change in the climate of the climate, for me, can be summarized as that whatever you're going to save, you better save it now, because later is officially over. Later will be too late. And what has inspired me by the last day and a half, and so crystallized by the two of you, is that while later is officially over, I do think we still have a chance that it won't be too late. So Tom Steyer, Paul Hawken, thank you. Thank all of you for coming today.